Hey everyone, quick update about this video. I am so sorry that the original upload got cut off about halfway through the analysis. This video consists of the complete analysis. I have no idea how that happened, but if you watched an earlier version of this video, you've only seen the first third or so of the analysis. So here's the official re-upload. Thank you so much for informing me that the video was cut off in the middle, and sorry for any inconvenience it caused. Thank you so much. Hey everyone, how's it going? Forrest here, again with another installment of my complete analysis of all of J.S. Bach's chorale harmonizations. Today we are breaking the order a bit because I got a request from a viewer to analyze Die Nacht, kommen, which is BWV 269. It translates to The Night Has Come. It's a pretty interesting chorale, has some very unusual chromatic movement and a very interesting set of modulations, and we'll go through them as we approach them chronologically throughout the chorale, so we should get started. So no sharps in the key signature, no flats in the key signature. We start on G major and we end on G major, and from the looks of it, it kind of looks like we would be in the key of C, but we're actually in the key of G, and there's just no key signature. Some of Bach's chorales do that, whether it's just an editorial thing or whether he just excludes the key signature for the sake of simplicity in his own writing because he doesn't spend the whole chorale in G, just the beginning and the end. I think conventions might have changed since Bach's time. That being said, first phrase ends in an imperfect authentic cadence in the key of G major. This is pretty straightforward. We start off with our tonic. We then get F sharp, A, D, and A, which is D major over F sharp, that's 5-6. And then instead of going to G major, we go to a G major bass, but we have an a G major foundation, but we have an F in the bass. That is G7 over F, which is 5-4-2, a 4, which is the dominant of our subdominant in third inversion, 5-4-2 of 4. And that goes exactly where we expect it to go, C major, which is our 4. E, G, E, and C, or 4-6, C major in first inversion. We then get F sharp, A, D, and C, which is D7 over F sharp, which is G major's dominant in first inversion, before we cadence on G major, G, G, D, and B, which is our tonic. And this 4-6 going to 5-6-5 going to 1 is a typical progression, or I shouldn't say typical per se, I should say that it's a progression that comes up in Bach's music with a little bit of frequency. Alright, then we have a perfect authentic cadence in the key of A minor. Now, if you're someone who strictly subscribes to the idea of common chord modulations, or trying to force them even where they may not be the most appropriate, you could call this G chord a 7 chord. However, this sounds more like a direct modulation to me. In fact, with the rest here, and the rest following them, all of the phrases actually, except for the last one, the majority of there are a handful of phrases that sound like a direct modulation. But we start things off actually kind of interestingly. We have C sharp, G, E, and A, and you can make an argument that we have a brief visitation to D minor here, but I'm going to analyze it all in A minor for the sake of simplicity. We have C sharp, G, E, and A. That's A7 over C sharp, which is 5-6-5. In the key, 5-6-5 of 4 in the key of A minor, and then we have D, F, D, and A, which is our 4 chord in root position with a passing 7th and an anticipation here in the tenor. That D gets held over, and we have E, B, and G sharp over that, which is E7 over D, which would be 5-4-2. in the key of A minor. So we're seeing this pattern of 5-4-2 here used a lot, and this isn't the last 5-4-2 we're going to see. That goes to where we would expect it, the tonic of its dominant direction in first inversion. So C, E, E, and A, which is A minor in first inversion. This A is a chord tone. We then have D, A, F, and B, which is B minor 7 flat 5 in first inversion, 2-6-5. We know that Bach loves his 2-6-5 chords. We then have E, G sharp, E, and B, which is E major, root position. Passing 7th in the alto before we cadence on A minor, A, C, and A. 3 roots and a third. Pretty typical, perfect authentic cadential formula here. Then we have probably the most interesting phrase in the entirety of the chorale. Definitely spent some time pondering over what's going on here, and to be honest, I don't know exactly what's going on. I think there's an argument to be made that a perfect authentic cadence is happening here, but I think there's also an argument that maybe maybe a plagal cadence or something ending with a tonic but not preceded by a dominant. So I don't know which, but I lean more on the side of the perfect authentic cadence, and even though it's kind of a weaker perfect authentic cadence, we'll talk about why. But we start things off first, and this is also in the key of D minor. We start things off with A minor again, A, E, A, and C, so no need to reanalyze. And then we go to C major over E, 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 G, and C, which is a 3 chord in first inversion. Actually, before I move on, what you could do is, if you want to analyze these chords in the key of D minor, you could say that this was in the key of D minor and say that this is 6-5 and this is 1, which could then be considered 4 in the key of A minor. Like so. But like I said, I'm analyzing the whole thing in A minor. We have the entire chorale written. It's just a different take. They more or less articulate the same thing, with 2 A's in the melody as well. I'm thinking A minor regardless. The rest of the voices are also somewhat supporting it, other than the bass, which has the C sharp. Okay, but then we have this 3-6 chord, which is interesting. We have some neighbor tones going on in the inner voices before we get the same chord in root position, C major. So I'm just going to change the figured bass to reflect that. It's very unusual progression. We have 1 going to 3, and then that 3 is just inverted. It almost feels as if we are in the key of C major because we hear the chord twice, but I don't think it happens. There's no dominant action, and it happens so infrequent for such a brief period of time. We're arpeggiating A minor in the bass. The melody just feels like C major. But the melody does this twist here where we go C, 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 B, A. So it feels like A minor, and then we leap up to D for whatever reason. So it feels like this phrase is sort of its own island in the sea of this chorale that kind of feels a little bit more conjunct thematically. But then we have F, A, G, and A, and I think what's being implied here is a 6 chord, F major. 3 wants to go to 6, right? But instead of resolving the suspension, right, the 9/8 suspension, Bach interrupts it. Regardless, I think this is our common chord, moving to the key of D minor, which is now our 3 chord. I know it's weird seeing a 3 go to a 6 and then just to another 3. 3 is a chord that's, I don't want to say seldom used, but out of all of the chords, I think 3 in Bach's harmonic vocabulary is probably the least common of the chords. 6 is also relatively uncommon, but we do see it used in a lot of context. When we do see it used, we see it used with frequency, or frequently rather. But here I think it's our common chord, and then we have some non-chord tones going on. Chromatic passing tone, neighbor tone, and a little passing tone here. And this F, which was a suspension, is no longer a chord tone on the offbeat. So we have G, C sharp, E, and A, with this F being a 7/6 suspension, or just a dissonant passing tone on top of the figure or the chord, and this would be an A7 over G, so another 5/4/2 chord in the key of D minor, and that goes where we would expect 1/6, so F, D, F, and A, D minor root position. And this is where it gets kind of interesting. So the F going down to D is what makes it sound kind of plagal to me. or rather the G going down to D feels a little bit more plagal as like a big gesture. But what we get on the and here is E, E, G, and A, which kind of, and I know I'm kind of forcing a little bit of a perspective here, but this looks like A7 over E, which would be 5-4-3, despite the fact that we don't have a C sharp literally in the chord. We have all of the makings otherwise, but thirdless major triads, or thirdless 7 chords, if they're not diminished or augmented, I guess, don't have the same punch. They hit different. So take with it what you will. The melody still feels like 5 going to 1. There are other aspects of this chorale that feels supported as if this is a perfect authentic cadence, because we do cadence with the tonic and the melody. Like I said, I think this is just a very strange cadence in general, but there are the makings of, if you needed to make the argument of there being a dominant to tonic motion, here it is. It's just happening with a lot of activity in the lower voices. There's just a lot going on. But moving forward, I also have this weird formatting error here. I like to have phrases not end at the beginning of a system, like so. But it is in here regardless, and I think that this is a perfect authentic cadence in the key of G major, so we're looking for a point in which we modulate back. However, I think, albeit very briefly, we do visit the key of C major here, and this is our 2 chord, and the only reason why I wouldn't mark this as a direct modulation to the key of C major is because the 2 does want to go to 5, so G, D, G, and B, which is G major in root position, passing 7th in the bass, and then we get C major in first inversion, E, E, G, and C. So 5 going to 1-6, so 2-5-1, which then gets recontextualized as the 4-6 in the key of G major. It's now our subdominant before we go to D major over F sharp, D, A, and A, 5-6, 4-6, 5-6, 4-6, 5-6. I guess this is 5-6-5, but they're still first inversion, 4 and 5 chords. And then we go to our tonic triad in root position with the same voicing. 1 chord, but we have this 9/8 suspension in the bass as well, which resolves on the next and then we have D, C, F sharp, and A. This sort of being a dissonant. It is technically a dissonant suspension, but it's like double dissonant in the sense that the resolution is also, well, dissonant. This would be a 5-7 chord, because on the resolution we get the full contextualization of the chord, which is F sharp and C, before we cadence on G major, G, B, D, and G, which is our tonic and root position. Okay, looking ahead, we have an imperfect authentic cadence in the key of F major. Very interesting to go from G to F, but he does so in kind of an elegant fashion. We have G, B, G, and D, which is our tonic triad again, and then we have F sharp, A, and D, which is D major in first inversion. This D is a chord tone, and then we go to G, B, G, and D, and we'd be tempted to call this 1, but look at this F natural here. This F natural implies perhaps something else is happening, and this might actually be 5 of 4. Are we seeing a pattern here? We have 1, 5, 6, 5 of 4, or even more relevant, 1, 5, 6, 5 of 4, going to 1, 6. E, C, G, and C, which is our dominant now in the key of F major. And this sounds like a very strange phrase. It sounds like he's moved. It actually sounds like he's moved a great distance. So we have neighbor tones in the alto and the bass. We then have another iteration of the same chord that turns into root position on the and of 4 before we cadence on F major, F, A, F, and C, F, C, F, and A, with the third of the chord and the melody here making it imperfect authentic. Then we have a half cadence in the key of G major, and I think this C major chord is our common chord. In the key of F major, it is 5, 6, E, E, G, and C, but in the key of G major, it is 4, 6. We then have F sharp, D, A, and C. Have we seen this one before? That's D7 over F sharp. I think we sorry, have right here. And then we have G, D, A, and B, but it's this G that's actually our chord tone. This is a 9/8 suspension, so it is a tonic triad that's being implied. We then get C, E, G, and C, which is C major, root position. That's our subdominant passing tone in the melody, neighbor tone in the tenor, before we get C sharp, E, G, and A. That's A7 over C sharp. We've seen this chord voiced this way as well. That would be the dominant of the dominant in first inversion, so that'd be 5, 6, 5 of 5, before we cadence on D major, D, D, F sharp, and A. And you could make the argument that this is a quick modulation to the key of D major. I think it just depends on your viewpoint on what constitutes a modulation. I said that this is a half cadence because a typical hallmark of Bach's half cadences is that the fifth of the chord is in the melody. That's something that's pretty consistent across his half cadences. Not always, but often. And as we get ready for our final cadence, our final phrase, it ends with a perfect authentic cadence in the key of the tonic. No more modulations. So we have B, D, G, and D, G major in first inversion. We then have E, G, G, and C, C major in first inversion. That's a 4/6 chord. And when we see 4/6, it's interesting. We tend to see some type of leading tone action going on, but it's usually in the bass. But here we have a very interesting progression, but we still get leading tone action. So we have F sharp, A, C, and E, which is F sharp minor 7 flat 5 in third inversion. So this is another third inversion 7 chord. We've seen them used quite often in this chorale, right? We had the 5/4/2 here, 5/4/2 here, 5/4/2 here, and he uses them with some regularity. Here we're seeing 7/4/2, which then goes to, interestingly, D, D, G, and B. So instead of going to 1, it goes to 1/6/4, and we're seeing it in somewhat close proximity to the cadence, so it's not it doesn't make it, I mean it makes some sense, but we would expect this typically to resolve in the other direction, so it's interesting to see this manifest this way. This E and this C, those are both non-chord tones. You could make the argument that there is a little 4/7 chord going on here, but I don't think that's super important, especially because we're expecting the dominant to happen afterwards. So we have D, A, G, and A, which is just a 5 chord with a 4/3 suspension, especially because the tone is being held over. This D is a chord tone, and we have the delayed 7th here, but otherwise these are all chord tones. We could put a bracket underneath here as well if you follow a textbook, or if you do analysis that way to show the relationship between 1, 6, 4, and 5. And then of course we cadence on 1 at the end, as we often do, G major in root position, G, B, D, and G. And that is the analysis of this chorale. So all in all, I think the shakiest analysis in this chorale is the third phrase. Not only is the chord progression unusual, but the cadence is very unusual as well. And I would say that take that analysis with a grain of salt. I think that my explanation of the phrase is valid, and it justifies the strangeness and a little bit of what's going on, but this cadence doesn't fall clearly into one camp or the other. I just threw out a couple of different viewpoints in regards to what it could be, and I would be interested to hear your thoughts on the cadence as well. Right now, I mean, like I said, I think there are two main pieces of evidence that contribute to it being perfect authentic, but it really doesn't sound like a perfect authentic cadence. It really just is a perfect authentic cadence just because it has some supporting information on the page, and it really sounds less permanent than that, which is why I think it might also be a plagal cadence because of the trajectory of the bass line 4 going to 1. That is scale degrees rather than chords. I know there's not literally a 4 chord that happens here, but like I said, it's not a perfect cadence, and these are the analyses that I actually really enjoy because they force you to think and use, critical reasoning to come to a conclusion about things. But I don't think there is a definitive answer regarding what kind of cadence this is. It just has particular qualities of some, and it might lean more heavily in terms of one, but I think we need more variety in terms of our vocabulary to describe these cadences because it's not 100% clear. But other than that, I think the chorale is pretty straightforward. The harmony functioned, despite using a lot of secondary dominants, it functioned exactly the way we would expect it to. No weird resolutions, no tricks really. I'd say the closest thing to a harmonic trick would be, instead of resolving to a tonic in some cases, we resolve to the secondary dominant. I'll cue the second beat of the first complete measure of the chorale. But other than that, this was a delight to analyze, and it was awesome to see a chorale that didn't have instrumental interludes for a day. So thank you so much for suggesting this chorale. I hope I gave you some insight to help you with whatever it is you were planning on doing with this chorale, whether you're performing it or whether you have a class. I hope the analysis proved helpful and it leads you in some direction. It was really nice to sort of break it up and listen to a chorale that was a standalone piece of music. This does not come from a cantata, or at least the way that it's been cataloged, it is its own standalone chorale, so it's interesting, and I would be curious to do some more research to see the context in which this chorale was written, because it doesn't seem to have a biblical context, and the chorale was originally found without text, so the fact that text was later attributed to it could mean something entirely different, because Bach wasn't the one who selected the text, and I don't know if Bach was ever a librettist to his own works that had vocal components, but I think it would be likely that he selected a text and composed to it. But regardless, we'll probably never know. That being said, I'm going to end the video. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. I very much appreciate everyone's watching of the videos and subscribing, and it's really awesome to see that people are enjoying the content as I'm making it. There's tons of it to be made, so stay tuned for more, and I look forward to tomorrow's analysis. I hope you take care.